So we've got Steve, Rosie, and Sarah. Thank you for changing your name on that. We're going to be doing something different. Rather than teaching, or use that term loosely, we're going to be discussing female menopause. And people who are watching this going, why? You're a men's mental health charity. Because, well, it is a weird one, isn't it? Why would we do that? But we looked at some...
Yes, it is, and no, it isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got the word female in it for starters.
No, exactly that. But we're a men's mental health charity, but we also support females and all blah blah blah. But anyway, we looked at a survey. I saw a survey. I think there was 1,000 women. It was quite recent as well. I think within a year, 1,000 women were surveyed. 70% of those females said that the menopause caused the fall of their, caused them to have a divorce or a breakup in their relationships and all of this kind of stuff. And there are some links as well that around the same age of the female menopause, there's something called, I don't know if it's a scientific term or just a bantery term, there's the menopause, when testosterone, there's going to be a video for that coming straight after this, but when testosterone drops. So the woman's feeling a little bit naff. The bloke's thinking she's just going completely and utterly mental and just doesn't love him anymore. So he's feeling sensitive. The woman probably just wants to be on her own. So rather than blag it, let's talk about it and see if we can help save some relationships through this video. Have I made sense?
Oh, completely. Well, it's about opening up the discussion, isn't it?
Exactly that, because that's the main thing is people, if people start feeling left out or unloved, it can cause confidence issues, and there's a knock-on effect of the mental health and all sorts. And there's nothing worse than being in a relationship where they're not talking to each other.
No, and it's a very interesting and very complex subject, I think, because
I'm shitting.
I was talking to Rosie about this very briefly at the ROI event that we did in Ipswich, and I read a book a long time ago. Women are from Venus, men are from Mars, or something like that. I can't remember what it was now. And it's just so, the way that women are wired up and the way that men are wired up is so different. And it's kind of the sensitivity kind of goes in polar opposites. But Rosie was saying that she'd done an awful lot of stuff at work because she's in a male-dominated environment. I don't know why I'm speaking for Rosie at this point, but anyway, she's in a very male-dominated environment, and it's just quite interesting, you know, the bits and pieces that she'd done. So Rosie, Sarah, tell us more about what you've done to kind of address this, because clearly, you know, men are coming into work, they've got the arse ache about, you know, this, that, and the other, whatever's going on at home. And it's not necessarily their fault, and it's not necessarily the woman's fault. It's just a kind of a conflict, I suppose, at a middle-age point where people are going through menopause.
Well, I'll be honest, I can't take much of the credit for the menopause campaigns that we've done. Sarah's really driven those within our business. But I absolutely agree with your point, as in, we are all human and these things are going to happen through life, and it's the most natural processes that we're going through. So menopause, or I think you named it manopause. Our business use it as andropause. So all those things are just natural to begin, and I've been having this conversation so much at the moment. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in almost every situation you're in, and this is pretty similar. But Sarah drove a campaign last year. It was the first time that we did an awareness campaign, so it was literally just putting information out there, telling people what the signs and the symptoms were, and just a couple of simple posters in the toilets and emails and using on our intranet, literally just communication on it to make people aware that this happens. And Sarah, I don't know if you want to share our success with it, but I was overwhelmed with the amount of men that came back to us with feedback about, oh wow, I've gone back and I can understand my wife's perspective or a loved one's perspective, and she doesn't hate me, she's just going through a change.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, because when we've spoken about menopause and stuff like that before via MANUP, most blokes that I talk to have spoken to him in my life don't have a clue about it. literally don't have a clue about the symptoms or anything like that.
No, but are you talking to people? I mean, you know, I'm a bit older than you, so you know,
No
with
comment.
with respect, shut up. So with respect, is it kind of people of your age group that haven't kind of quite got there yet?
No, maybe so.
I'm just, you know.
Yeah, well, no, I'll use one example. I remember I was helping somebody out. I'll be careful with words because I know they watch videos, but there was somebody, they sent an email over to me, and then I kept like repeating myself to the person. I was just like, I've already told you this. And then they just didn't, they seemed away with the fairies. So I knew something was wrong. So I phoned up their leader. I was like, I think this person's losing the plot. I don't know what's going on with her. I'm really concerned of her. She was like, she's started the menopause, mate. And I started doing a lot of this whole welfare checks and all this kind of stuff. It was because I didn't have a clue. I just thought she was going mad.
Sarah, tell us what you did.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that it's education and awareness, because even like women within our business don't realize what the menopause is or how that will affect them. You know, I think in schools and stuff like that, the education on like sex education, periods and all that kind of stuff is out there, whereas menopause isn't. It's not really talked about at all. And it's only when I started doing my research to do our campaign for last year that I actually thought, you know what, every single woman is going to go through this transition, you know, and it, you know, the symptoms can change. You know, some women will go through it really badly and some won't, but you know, every woman will go through the menopause, every woman will go through that transition. And I think it's the education piece that, you know, both men and women don't know what the menopause is. And that's really shocking. That's a really shocking statistic that they don't know.
I'm not sure that you can teach that at school, though. And are people not a bit too, I mean, you know, I understand, you know, sex education, but really, I mean, to a 16, 17, 18-year-old, you know, somebody who's in their 40s is like, you know, waiting in God's waiting room, really. I mean, they're, you know, they're most of the way dead.
Yeah,
Oh, no, they are though. But, you know, they're most of the way dead. I mean, that's, you know, that gap at that stage, that age gap at that stage is, you know, if somebody's in their mid-40s, they're old.
But I'll be honest, just speaking from my experience here, being, I don't know if I'm scared to admit this, but I didn't know what the menopause was until that Sarah put her campaign, and it was that bad that this may be oversharing. I went to my mum's and I said, "Oh, mum, have you got any sanitary products?" She was like, "What? I'm like 50 odd, no." And I was like, "Why not?" And then we had this campaign, and I was like, "Oh my God," as if I asked my mum that.
Well, okay.
I when would I learn that? Would be my response to that. When if schools don't teach us the whole thing, is it down to the businesses to give us that education?
Yeah, it does seem weird. Like a massive employer Briggs Equipment is having to train people, educate people on the menopause. I get the logic behind it, and I fully applaud it. And well done to you guys. I've always supported you guys for a long time now, and vice versa. But yeah, why are employers educating?
Because where else are you going to learn it?
But isn't that the point of this call?
Yeah. So you know, I mean, do you go to your GP because you don't feel quite right, or?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think is the problem also, probably jumping ahead, is the problem, would women admit, do women know that they're going through the menopause?
I think even some healthcare professionals really struggle to really diagnose if somebody's going through the menopause. The menopause is kind of defined when you've not had like a period for 12 months or more. And then it's really hard because it all depends on your human biology, I guess. But normally it's when, you know, a woman stops their period for 12 months is kind of when a healthcare professional will look into it and whether or not it is menopause or not.
Right. That's the kind of the clinical deadline. That's the clinical line in the sand, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah.
But would most women, I know you can't speak for everyone, but would most women actually keep that secret from their partners? Just, I don't know, I don't want to say out of embarrassment, but would they? because I think that. Because my main thing is I think what I'm trying to say is if out of a thousand women, 70% of them said that as a result of their relationship or divorce or the breakdown of their relationship. Actually, if they were willing to, I don't want to pass blame, but if they were willing to say, I think I'm going through my menopause and speak to their partners, do you think they might have saved some?
You would like to think so. I think some of it is embarrassment, or they just don't know what's going on with their body. You know, they're going through lots of symptoms, you know, stopping their periods being one of them, but it could be, you know, brain fog, could be hot flushes, you know, all that kind of embarrassment that comes with it. And I think, you know, menopause didn't really come out until Davina McCall started it, you know, all those years ago when she was going through it. And you know, the topic, and I think that conversation that needs to happen. And I think it is around the education, you know, that men do know what's going on with their partners, wives, mums, because every single woman will go through it at some point.
Yeah. So have you got any tips for like our male followers? It's like 95% of male followers. But have you got any? I know it's hard to say like you should look like the hot flushes. I've always presumed that it's just, if a woman's going for the hot flushes and she looks like she's in that age group. Being very careful what I say here. If she looks like she's in that age group, then maybe it's just that. But actually, I spoke to somebody who said no, I didn't have any hot flushes. Yeah. Like, what is it with women making everything that difficult? But have you got any like tips? What could people be looking out for? And I know that's not the biblical version of it. What would blokes be looking out for with let's just say partners?
I think that, you know, I think we should be looking out for any changes, you know, like their mood swings, the changes in their habits. The top tip that I would probably say is have that conversation with your partner, you know, about how they're feeling. You know, you've noticed some changes, you know, and I think it's all about that support. You know, it's not that they hate you, it's that they are going through a change in their life. You know, it's a massive change. You know, when a woman stops her period, they can no longer reproduce after that, you know, so it's having that you know, having a baby taken away from you, and that is a massive change to some people, you know, some women in particular. Yeah. So, you know, I think have that conversation, have that open and transparent conversation with your loved one and support them. And, you know, if they need something, like they're going for a hot flush or they can't sleep, you know, it's about, you know, buy a fan, you know, a lower duvet cover or something like that, so that you're supporting them through that transition, because it's not going to be for the whole, you know, their lifespan. It is only for, you know, 4 years to 14 maximum years, obviously longer depending on some women, but you know, it's not going to happen all the time. They will return back to normal at some point.
Did you just say 14 years? It can go on for 14 years?
Yeah, sometimes longer. All depends. It depends on the person.
Okay. That's a long time to have to deal with, because I mean, you know, I'm at that age where, you know, we've got a lot of friends that are, you know, women that are going through it, but they can go from cold to hot in a nanosecond. You know, so they're like really, really hot. So we open all the doors and all the rest of it, and then they're like freezing cold, and like, oh, there's kind of there's no rhyme or reason to it. I think that's the difficult part, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, not one size fits all. Every woman will go through different elements of the menopause. Some people might have hot flushes, some might have brain fog, you know, some might have joint pain. The list is endless on, you know, the menopause symptoms, and unfortunately, not everybody will experience the same symptoms. It will differ from person to person.
See, that's the thing. I don't. Faye doesn't watch the video, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know if I've got the big enough balls to say to her in a few years' time, you're right, I think you're going through the change. She'll punch me.
Well, yeah, if she's going through the change, yeah, you'll probably get a baseball bat around the back of your head.
But I wouldn't. I'm surprised I've not already had one a few times. But I don't know how I would approach like Faye. Like how would a bloke because he's obviously noticing that something's different.
I don't think anybody can give an answer to that, because that's, you know, that's it's individual, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that really would depend on your communication style with your partner. So, you know, if you would normally have an outright conversation, that's fine. If you would normally communicate differently, or yeah, I think that really does depend on how you already communicate with a loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. I think it's such a hard one, but I think it's one of those really, really hard ones. Like with men's mental health, if you see somebody struggling a little bit, so maybe sometimes you just got to, within reason and tactfully, just call it out and just say, you know, I know something's wrong here, and maybe I don't know, maybe I don't know what it is, but what's changed with us, or something's different. Let's talk about it.
I think it's good to try and tackle things head on, but I will say, just returning back to Steve's point at the beginning when he spoke about female and male communicating really differently. I'll be honest, in the event, the ROI event, when somebody said that on stage, I was like, oh my goodness me, men and females communicate so differently. Like, how am I just understanding this? And I think that that's where the difficulty comes. You're trying to communicate a really difficult topic about somebody else that's not you. So for instance, if you were talking to your partner about that, you're trying to communicate like a male to a female who's probably having something going on, and vice versa when it's men going through that situation, or any health problems, or anything that we need to have difficult conversations about. I think it's the perception that's really it's really difficult, isn't it, to be like, how do you
it is, yeah. And in that book, I mean, it's very specific about the fact that when men talk to men, they expect advice, they expect feedback, they expect, my engine keeps stalling on my motorbike, whatever it is, and I'm having that conversation with, shut up. I knew that was going to come up, and that was a really bad analogy, but shut up. Then I would expect, another man to say, well, have you tried this? Have you done this? Have you, check your wiring, check your earth, check your or whatever. Women don't do that. When women have a problem, they speak to other women. They don't expect advice back. They want empathy. They don't want somebody to turn around and try and fix their problems. Whereas a bloke kind of almost puts it out as a cry for help. My indicators don't work. He's expecting somebody to turn around and say, well, have you checked this? Or, have you changed the bulb, whatever, and give advice back. Whereas women don't want that. The problem that you've got then is that clash between a man saying, what's up? What's the problem? The woman coming back with feedback, and the man trying to fix it, which he can't fix. When all she wants is empathy, he's trying to fix it and say, well, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? Which is probably the very thing that the woman doesn't want to hear. I'm just going to throw that up in the air.
Yeah. Sarah, have you got any comment on that one? You're the most knowledgeable.
I think it's, going back to what I said earlier, I think it is about starting that conversation, and that is the biggest barrier in all relationships. And like Rosie said, it's about how you communicate with each other. But I think that is the starting point of having that conversation with your loved one, to say, look, something's not right. Do you think it could be, could be the perimenopause, could be the start of it, or the menopause, the fully fledged one. So I think it is going back to opening that conversation and yeah, kind of unpicking it a little bit.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Just not give advice on it, isn't it? Really, I think, like Steve was saying about fixing, I think that's one of the. Here's me running a charity, CEO, blah, 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 of a mental health charity. And sometimes when Faye's a bit wonky and she'll want to talk, I'm like, okay, what we're going to do? We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. She's just like, just shut up.
Yeah. Just stop and listen to me. Just shut up for 5 minutes while I talk.
So I think we've already drawn to a close, haven't we? That was a.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's, it gives people a starting point, I suppose, and that's all you can do, because as Sarah says, you know, if there's a million different versions of what can happen to a woman at that stage in her life, you're never going to know until you have the conversation, are you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And just one thing is there an average age bracket of the menopause when it normally kicks in?
Yeah, so the average age is around 51, but it can be anything really. It can start as early as in your 20s, 30s, especially if you've gone through an operation or you've had cancer. That can kind of set the menopause off. But typically the average age for a woman is around 51, but anything between 30 to 60, I would say. But yeah.
Wow.
Right. Okay. So I don't think there's okay. I'm not going to say the next bit. So no, that I was going to walk into a minefield there. So I apologise.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. And are there any like charities or services? What do you think? What would benefit?
I tend to go to like menopause charities. So there is one called the Menopause charity. That's really good for advice. What I would say is, you know, if you're unsure whether or not your partner is going through it, do your research. You know, understand the symptoms, what support you can give them. I think that is the key bit, having that conversation, but also doing your research on the menopause. And you know, that conversation will come from education and awareness of what the menopause is.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm making this up as I go, do you think it's appropriate if, I don't know, if you're friends with the partner's best friend or whatever else, do you think it'd be appropriate to ask them and just say, have you noticed something with blah blah blah? Do you think something's a bit wonky and get them to do your dirty work?
I think it depends on the relationship that you've got with them. I wouldn't want to say yes or no. I think it all depends on how close relationships they've got, and you know your partner better than anybody, so you kind of know what you can disclose and what you can't disclose. So I don't think there's not a one size fits all answer to the menopause.
Just I think the one size fits all is just don't hide away from it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the only way. And say like out of 1,000 women, 70% of them said that caused a relationship and the fail of their relationship. But we ain't going to save all of them. Of course we're not. It's impossible. But if we can help 5 relationships be saved, then the whole video is worth it, really. But is that the same as mental health, isn't it? The only solution to fixing mental health or keeping mental health healthy is by talking about it. That's it. It's simple. Even the severe ones, the schizophrenia, whatever else, the ones which are arguably incurable, they can live some really, really good, healthy lives by talking.
Yeah.
Being able to express themselves.
Exactly that. But on that bombshell, I think our work here is done, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you for having us.
No, absolutely. Thank you.